Well, good. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of the, excuse me, while I get a frog out of my throat here. Is there still a frog in my throat? Yes, I think there might still be a frog in my throat. But then again, this is the biodiversity discussion, so perhaps that's appropriate to have a frog in my throat. So welcome to day 3 of the TSL Partner Power Summit and to panel discussion number 1 of 4 days of very interesting panel discussions about protecting biodiversity. So today's discussion is all about the value of biodiversity to young people. And we hope you will also join us tomorrow, where we talk about how we measure biodiversity, and the next day where we talk about what action young people in schools can take to help protect biodiversity. And finally, day 4, where we look ahead for next steps and future action to do even more, what more schools and young people can do. So please bear with us if we do have any technical issues today. Our wonderful technical team is based in Toronto, Canada, led by Eva, Ellis, and we just ask your patience, please, if any issues do come up. Right, so I will just very briefly like to introduce our wonderful panelists today. We have Sam Walker, the now 16, was 15-year-old winner of our TSL 2021 International Schools Essay Competition. And we also welcome from Thailand, Vijo Varghese from the OurLand Nature Reserve. And finally, Megan Quinn, representing IUCN Global Youth and coming to us, I believe, from Ottawa, Canada. Welcome, Megan. So with those just very brief introductions, please could we play the video message from the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity Executive Director, Elizabeth Maruma. When you're ready, please, Eva.
Dear participants, it is with great pleasure that I join you for the 2021 TSL International Schools Debates and Partner Power Summit. This year, you have chosen to speak specifically about protecting biodiversity, and I applaud you for doing so. If you chose that theme, it is because you know that biodiversity continues to be lost at an unprecedented rate and needs urgent attention. For the very first time last September, 85 heads of state and government signed a pledge for nature, thus committing to putting biodiversity at the heart of their COVID-19 recovery strategies and investments. They also talked about the fact that solutions to biodiversity crises can be found in nature. And in parallel to this, governments continue to negotiate the terms of an ambitious biodiversity framework that will guide actions to protect biodiversity for the next 10 years. This recognition by the world leaders is very important. It is important because it supports your efforts and your actions for biodiversity. All citizens, business people, parents, educators, scientists, social workers, indigenous peoples and local communities, and you, young people, can do something to help nature. Every one of us is part of the solution. You can think of solutions that are close to you. You can change your consumption practices to buy local food and food that is grown organically. You can reduce your demand and needs for energy. You can reduce food and water waste. When you go out in nature, you can avoid displacing animals, insects, plants, or organisms. You can take pictures of them instead. You can help to restore ecosystem by planting local trees and plants. You can also teach your younger siblings and even adults to respect nature. And you can turn these practices into movements that will influence others in your community and perhaps eventually in your country and even at international level. Many youth have demonstrated that they are positive movers and shakers. Many of them contribute to the work of the Convention on Biological Diversity. They gather under the Global Youth Biodiversity Network and share their concerns and solutions with governments and other stakeholders. Our survival as human beings depends on biodiversity. I encourage you to continue your efforts to protect biodiversity and to continue to remind people around you that they are part of the solution and that they can do something for the benefit of the planet. I wish you a successful Partner Power Summit. Thank you.
So we'd like to thank the the Secretariat for the UN Convention on Biological Diversity for sending that message through to all the participants of the summit. Now, who better to speak about the topic of the value of biodiversity to young people than a young person, the grand prize winner of the TSL 2021 essay competition, Sam Walker, who is joining us from Eden College School in South Africa. Over to you, Sam.
Hello. I'm so very happy to be here today.
We're very happy to have you join us. Thank you very much. Are you ready, Sam, to perhaps introduce yourself briefly and share your opening thoughts?
Yeah. So just as Karl said, I'm 16 years old, and I am currently in term 2 of grade 10 in Eden College, and I live in Durban in South Africa, and I am a citizen of the world, and I like to consider myself rather as a part of humankind rather than anything else. So I'm very excited to be here and very grateful for this opportunity.
Well, we're very excited to have you with us, Sam. Very, very excited. And have you prepared a few thoughts to share as a panelist on the topic?
I have prepared an answer to your questions, but in regards to thoughts, I have many thoughts on biodiversity and what it should mean to young people, which I will answer in the questions.
Okay, brilliant. So, Sam, would you like us to move on to the next panelist at the moment, or would you like to speak a little bit further to sort of give some opening statement?
Well, I think that first of all, biodiversity is extremely important, whether you are a young person or on your deathbed. But the truth is that the future for biodiversity lies in the generation now and the generation to come. So it lies in the youth of this world to protect biodiversity and to conserve and also to educate them about it. So I feel that the importance of biodiversity should be taught to young people, and we should educate young people, especially about biodiversity. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we absolutely applaud your views on that. So, Sam, thank you very much. We're going to come back to you with some questions, further questions shortly. But next, I wonder if we have the presentation from Vijo ready. If we do, Eva, then perhaps we could start sharing that. And yeah, thank you very much. So over to our next panelist, Vijo. So great to have you with us today, and over to you.
Thank you, Karl. Well, I just wanted to start off with the fact that, as Sam just mentioned, biodiversity is absolutely crucial, whether you're alive or you're close to your deathbed. Which brings us to this point that, or the point of why we set up OurLand. OurLand is an organization based in Thailand as of now. And you can see that our core objectives is to increase wild and natural spaces, which of course results in increase in biodiversity, and secondly, improving human-wildlife coexistence, which is crucial because the populations of humans is going up and the space for animals is going down, right? So therefore, finding is very important to be able to find that balance in between. So these are the two core things that OurLand lives by. On the next slide, you'll be able to see, on the next slide, you'll be able to see what OurLand actually does. If you look at the picture, the red dot is where OurLand is based. And we have a 10-acre plot of land over there. Now you can see that there's some animals way on top in the yellow. And there's a yellow line that kind of divides the picture, going all the way from left to right. That's the main highway in the area. On the top is the Salakra Wildlife Sanctuary, one of the oldest wildlife sanctuaries in Thailand. And as you can see, all the animals are trying to get down to the river all the way at the bottom. And our objective as an organization is to protect as many plots of land as we can between the river and the wildlife sanctuary on top. Now you can see to the left and to the right of us, we're covered by farms. So it is very important to make sure that this corridor is kept as alive as possible, ensuring that we don't have any biodiversity loss, and also at the same time allowing animals on top to come down to the riverside, right? So in the next slide, you'll also see a little bit of the biodiversity that we actually have at OurLand. And we're proud to say that we have everything from the second largest land walking mammal on the top right. You can see the Asiatic elephant. And we also have the smallest mammal in the world, and that is the Kitti's hognose bat that flies around the reserve as well. So that's the primary part of what we are. And in the next slide, you'll see that it's not just the reserve. We also have the OurLand Eco Village and the OurLand Education Center. So if you can skip over to the next slide, and you can see here that oops, the picture missing. Maybe one more click, a few more clicks, and pictures should turn up. Right. So this is the OurLand Eco Village. This is the core heart of it, and we primarily run by the 4 core pillars of sustainability, which is water, shelter, food, and energy. Right. We work on mastering these 4 pillars, and therefore we've got sustainability kind of figured out, right? In a very small sense. If you look at if you click the next picture, you will see a picture of a bamboo hut that we have at the reserve. So it's a sustainable shelter. And we also now have mud houses as well. We're solar powered. Most of the water we use is rainwater harvested. Although the only thing we have trouble with is producing food, because the elephants do come and eat up most of the stuff that we produce. So now we produce food outside of the reserve, right? Over to the next slide. And the next important thing is very similar to what Sam said, which was primarily education. We have an education center that focuses on sustainability and nature conservation. And all of OurLand, all of the space we have and the surrounding areas and the communities that we have, we consider and almost like a classroom, like this one. This is a bamboo forest that we're teaching primarily about the importance of bamboo. So students from all over the world, students from Thailand, from local schools, from international schools, and adults as well, come to learn about conservation and nature here at OurLand. But on the next slide, you will see something else that's also very important, despite the fact that I talk about a lot of doing, a lot of activities, a lot of things we can do. This is a picture of a beautiful sunset. We can watch that from OurLand. And I think it's very important to also remember that tranquility and peace in your mind are also very important factors while we're keeping really busy trying to save the world. Okay, that's all from me, Karl. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vijo, for setting the scene. It sounds like you do amazing, amazing work, both for direct nature conservation and for education and helping people to live more sustainably with the part of the world that you are trying to protect. So very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that, and we'll come back to you with some questions shortly. Right, our next panelist, we'd like to welcome Megan Quinn, who, as I said earlier, she's been very much involved with the IUCN Global Youth Summit, and I believe she's going to share with us some of the experience and some of the feedback from her involvement there. So without further ado, Megan, huge welcome to the Partner Power Summit.
Thank you so much. Yes, as mentioned, my name is Megan Quinn. I'm joining today from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And I just want to acknowledge that this is the traditional and continued home of the Algonquin peoples, and just highlight the essential role that Indigenous people play in biodiversity and conservation. I sit on the Young Professionals Committee of the IUCN, which is the Canadian Committee of the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And our goal is really to support and empower Canadian youth on a national and international scale. And then I also work as the coordinator of conservation biology for Eastern Ontario with the Nature Conservancy of Canada, which is Canada's largest non-profit land conservation organisation. And I'm so happy to be here today to be talking about the value of biodiversity to young people and what the importance of that is. And I really want to start answering this question by just telling you a little bit about my history with nature. I am an immigrant to Canada, and my desire to advocate for youth involvement in nature is a really personal mission for me because of this. I grew up in the north of England in a town fairly void of nature, so I wasn't exposed to a lot of natural spaces growing up, and that's because they'd either been paved over or ripped up, or they just weren't safe to visit. And all that to say, the idea that I could even be a conservation biologist was so far beyond the realm of my possibility, because I didn't even know that that was a job that people did. So it really wasn't until I moved to Canada that my world quite literally expanded. And one of my favorite memories is when a friend of mine invited me on a backcountry camping trip not long after I moved. And even at a young age, there was just something so surreal about the experience. And I quickly realized that this was the first time in my life that I was stood somewhere and I couldn't see anything that was made by humans. And that honestly changed my life. And I think I'm living proof of what can happen when you give youth authentic access to nature and encourage them to get involved. So it's something that I'm really passionate about. And I'm so lucky because Canada has such a vast amount of diverse, beautiful natural spaces. And I want us to show that diversity in the people that we encourage to get outside. And I mean, that's not to say that, you know, England or other heavily developed places don't have beautiful natural spaces and robust conservation biology projects. They absolutely do. But biodiversity is valuable for young people because it allows us to take a sense of ownership over our communities and our natural spaces, whether that's something like a pollinator garden with native flowers in a local park, or you're going to a UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve. An introduction to biodiverse spaces empowers youth to make a difference in the world. And part of what we're doing with the Young Professionals Committee of the IUCN is ensuring that youth have the tools that they need to create that change. I think that young people really see the crisis that our climate is in, but instead of feeling an overwhelming sense of doom, we're kind of seeing it as an opportunity to do better. So we need to give youth an authentic seat at the table when we're discussing environmental issues, because this is our world too. As Sam said, we are citizens of this world, and as youth, we should get a say in how it's run. So a really important message that I took away from this year's Global Youth Summit, which I'll be talking about a little bit later, is the idea that if we expect youth to be the leaders of tomorrow, then we have to involve them in the process now. And I'm a really strong believer in this, and I truly think the more youth that we get involved in the field of biodiversity, the better our planet will be.
Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you so much. Stirring words and very inspiring. And again, going back to the youngest, excuse me, that frog keeps showing up in my throat. Going back to the youngest panelist here, perhaps this is a really appropriate time to ask Sam, what does biodiversity mean to you, Sam?
That is a really good question, especially considering everything that has been going on and how it should be important to everyone. especially young people. But when I think of biodiversity and its value, it's almost impossible for me to separate myself individually from the rest of the world. Because, why should I, as an individual, care about biodiversity when the global majority doesn't? And I feel this question raises points that extend far beyond the discussion of a biodiverse Earth. In a capitalistic world, we have been subconsciously raised to think of ourselves before others and to always strive for more and to never be satisfied. And it's been systematically ingrained in us to consume and to take as much as we can with never giving anything back. And we've been taught to think of ourselves as separate from nature, disconnected and as superior to all other species, rather than considering ourselves a part of them. And in a world like this, it's impossible to coexist with an environment that contradicts everything that we've been taught. And in a truly biodiverse world, there's a function and duty for everything. Everything has a function, everything has a duty to fulfill in the ecosystem. And we as a species have lost that purpose. We no longer benefit the Earth that we've inhabited. Instead, we've overproduced, overconsumed, and underperformed as a part of this planet. What we fail to realize is that as much as we would like to believe, the Earth doesn't need us. And if a species overpopulates, there'll be less and less food, more of the species will die out, and the Earth will regulate itself. And we're no different. The very pandemic we are currently living in is a prime example of that, and how we are overpopulated, and so diseases spread quicker, and Earth inevitably maintains balance. And as much as I would like to think otherwise, I am just a small human from a small country that barely has any importance in the grand scheme of things. And although this thought is terrifying, it's also really humbling. And I think it's a thought that we as a species need to realize. We really need to wake up and recognize that we as a species, there is something that is so much bigger than us, and we're part of something so much bigger than us. The question for me is not what biodiversity means to me, because that won't change the way humankind thinks. I think the real question is why we should care, why we should value biodiversity when there are so many other things to worry about. I, as a young person, and similar to many other young people around the world, have so many other things to worry about. My family, my health, my education. And I've been taught to overly focus on my life, to constantly think about myself and my impact on the environment around me. And as a young person, there's no space in my life to consider biodiversity. And so I don't. And so the majority of humankind doesn't. And that's where the problem lies. There's no way that we can stop extinction if we don't change. And we don't just need to change the way we consume, the way we produce, and the way we perform. We need to change the way we think, both as humans and as a part of this Earth. And I know why I can't separate myself and my relationship with biodiversity from the rest of humankind. It's not because I don't care about biodiversity, and it's not because I think biodiversity is irrelevant to me. It's because I see the world as a whole, as one big ecosystem. Humans are a species just like every other, and I think that we lost that knowledge when we decided we were better than the rest. And we lost our connection to nature, and I don't think anything will change unless we find that connection again.
Thank you, Sam. Well, you said you're a simple person on a simple planet, but I can see entirely why you are the winner of the essay competition for your incredibly thoughtful contribution there. So thank you very much for sharing that with us, Sam. Right, and now I'd like to just move over to Vijo. And Vijo, I'm really curious. You welcome young people into nature all the time at your OurLand Nature Reserve. And can you just tell us a bit about how they react when you bring them into your space there?
That's a good question, because there's all sorts of reactions there. I think that firstly, we have this tendency of thinking of ourselves as separate from nature. First step. So we've kind of evolved. Let's say specifically in the past, maybe like 500 years or 1,000 years or even 6,000, 10,000 years, let's say, that we've actually really pushed ourselves away and said, oh well, nature is separate. It's out there, and what's I am a separate human being as a being. And I think what that's led to is something that I kind of see with a lot of students that come by to OurLand, and that's the concept of biophobia. I've noticed that a lot of students suffer from biophobia. I know I sound very drastic. It's biophobia is a very drastic thing, but unfortunately it is. So biophobia is primarily the fear of anything, I guess, to some extent biological almost. So it's that feeling when when people see it, when the students see an earthworm, and they go, yeah, it's an earthworm. So it's or I've had the same reaction to people when it's dirt. I've had dirt on some children, and they're like, the first thing they want to do is just get it off me, just wash it. Just is there a tap nearby? Is there some soap? So it's that. So biophobia is that feeling inside, and I think that's one of the most common things I see within students, and they have this inner fear that that stuff out there is going to kill them. And I think that becomes more like from germophobia. And unfortunately, the thing about biophobia is that it is going to be one of the biggest deciding factors of whether nature will be protected in the future or not. Right. So as young people grow up, they grow up much older, and when they've come to a point in which they can choose to vote or to make a call at a government level, a legislative level, to protect nature, they simply don't see the point of protecting nature, because nature is not worth protecting because it's dirty, it's icky, it's not something I want to touch, right? So so that's one of the main things that we see, and we try to make sure that we want to transition over from biophobia into more like biolove, right, or biophilia, right? So it's a very simple form of actually making you realize that actually all that stuff out there is actually within you too. Actually, there's more germs in you. There's 1.2 trillion germs in you than there is actually a part of you. So actually all the way from your mouth all the way till down there, it's just a whole bunch of germs, right? And that's what's keeping you alive, right? And we have constantly as humans evolved over the millions of years we've been on the planet to absorb some of those germs and make them part of ourselves. So this idea that we're separate, we're in this little aquarium, and we're just walking by in Earth, and we're in this little ball glass sphere as we walk by. It's a very misconceived notion, and I think that's what I see primarily in children. And of course, the idea is that we're able to slowly shift that. And the work is not just on the children, but also on the parents as well, because it is from the parents that children usually get biophobia, right? So I guess that's a long answer to what I see with the students, but yeah, back to you, Karl.
Vijo, that's a very honest answer and quite disturbing, actually, in many ways. If we really have gone so far away, from our connection to nature. So, what advice do you give to those kids who do want to make a change, and perhaps to those germophobes and biophobes who you are trying to convert into biophiles and germophiles?
Well, I think that's a really tough one, because in the past 6 years that I decided to leave the corporate world and come into the world of nature and do education, I've worked really hard on finding an answer for this, because this is primarily the key to all the problems that we have. And I've looked hard, and I've tried hard to teach them about nature, just educate them, definitely one thing. Work hard on them being in a natural pace so that they can get over their fear. I think, but yet I think what I'm really stuck on, what I find as the biggest answer, usually is within the mind. And for that, I'd have to say that the one thing I've seen the most impact with children is meditation. Right? I think we're so used to it, and as Sam mentioned, we're constantly destroying nature. We're constantly always doing something out there in nature. And Sam put it so right, because we're just so used to consumption. We're so used to constantly consuming that we've kind of forgot. I wouldn't say we've forgotten. Maybe we never had it, or maybe we've forgotten it. Right? The very idea that you can actually stop, and you can actually be a completely happy person just sitting somewhere, And that's an alien concept to children a lot of the times. It's just, wait, I can actually be happy without a phone, without a laptop, without any of that stuff, just by sitting somewhere. And I think that's where my answer always comes back to meditation, because meditating just stills the mind. And a lot of the times we're so focused, and even as a conservationist or environmentalist, I must agree that I suffer from this too. I suffer from the do mode. I'm in do syndrome. I'm constantly in the do. Like, what can I do? Maybe I can drive over to the tree nursery nearby, buy a few trees and plant it over here, right? It's constantly the do, and not realizing the carbon impact of getting in my car, driving there and coming back, and then all those plastic bags that the trees are in and then planting it there. Not saying that planting trees is bad. I'm just saying that, sometimes it's just nicer to still the mind. And I think that's a very important thing for children to work upon. It's a muscle within the mind that we really, really need to instill within our children to still the mind. It's very important to still the mind so that we can have a calmer, more compassionate, and a much greener world.
Well, thank you, Vijo. It's interesting that both you and Sam brought up, systems issues. The systems of the world that we live in, whether that's economic systems, or whether that's busy, success. So it's very interesting that both of you have talked about that. Right, so Megan has been very patient. Now I'd like to bring Megan into the conversation. And Megan, really, really interested to hear a bit more about the IUCN Global Youth Summit that you participated in May. I think you said that there were about 13,000 participants or something massive like that. So, and it sounds like it had a big impact on your life. So we'd love to hear a bit more about about your work with the IUCN Youth.
Absolutely. So even better, it was over 15,000. So fantastic thing to be a part of. I was really honored earlier this year to be both the presenter and then attend the International Union for the Conservation of Nature's it was the first ever One Nature, One Future Global Youth Summit. It was held virtually, and it was sort of April 5th to 16th was the timeline there, brought together thousands of young people from across the globe to discuss and develop a call to action on biodiversity conservation, climate change, and social justice. So as I mentioned, over 15,000 people, over 170 countries registered for this landmark virtual gathering, and that's the most ever for any IUCN event. And I think, those numbers speak for themselves. That just shows how interested youth are in being involved and having their voices heard on these really important topics. So for me, the most electrifying part of the Global Youth Summit was connecting with my peers from all walks of life and all corners of the world, because the summit offered over 500 sessions that took place at all time of the day in 13 different languages and on a variety of different environmental topics. There were topics that I directly live and experience every day, like the role of immigrants and the role of women in the conservation movement, and topics that I was fiercely passionate about, like storytelling and Indigenous rights. And then there were topics that I had never fully considered before, and things like sweatshops and fashion and the impacts that those have on biodiversity and the global climate movement. So it really opened my eyes to a lot of topics as well. And so I think that's one of the strengths of the Global Youth Summit, was just how diverse it was able to be because of how broad everybody's experiences were. And the conference really encouraged youth to speak up and have our voices heard. And I think that's really important for biodiversity. Unfortunately, there are spaces where youth face discrimination or aren't taken seriously when they try to raise environmental issues. So one thing that the Global Youth Summit really showed is the huge number of youth who want to get involved, and that's hard to ignore. And it's also important for biodiversity because it allowed peer-to-peer connections from across the globe. I spoke with people from all walks of life who faced all kinds of environmental issues in their respective homes. And then additionally, and perhaps I think what we hope is going to make the biggest impact, the point of the Global Youth Summit was to develop recommendations to present to the IUCN member assemblies and during the IUCN World Conservation Congress this September. So under the 3 themes of diversity, accessibility, and intersectionality, recommendations are currently being compiled to call upon countries and corporations to invest in youth. And Canada is also creating its own set of outcomes, which we're currently developing and are in the works. So I'm talking about this amazing event, and there might be some of you that are like, oh, I wish I'd known about that, or I wish I could learn from that as well. And luckily, if you missed the Global Youth Summit, all of the sessions were recorded and are slowly being uploaded. There's a lot of content to try and get through there, but the opening and closing ceremonies, and then some of the intergenerational dialogue that happened, are available on the IUCN YouTube channel. And then all of the other recordings, including some of the Canadian sessions, are being added to the Global Youth Summit's YouTube channel. So please check those out. As I said, getting slowly up there, lots of content to get through, but fantastic discussions all around. And I just want to close this bit out by saying it's a really exciting time to be a young person in the environmental field. So I encourage you all to get involved, even if you no longer fit into that sort of under 35 demographic that they've used as to kind of be cut off for young professional in this content. I urge you to do what you can. There's a lot you can do to help inspire that next generation and those youth coming up to sort of take ownership of their mission and to protect and enhance our biodiversity. So lots of great things came out of the first Global Youth Summit, and super excited to see if we can make it even bigger next time.
Brilliant, brilliant there, Megan. And are you going to be part of those that group coming up with those recommendations for the September session of the IUCN World Conservation Congress?
So what I'm currently working on, so I sit on the Young Professionals Committee of the CC-IUCN, so the Canadian committee. We are bringing together a youth strategy to bring to the CC-IUCN of some of the things that we have learnt from the Global Youth Summit, which will contribute to the overall effort there. But during the actual sessions, the really neat part about the conference in general is that everybody got to participate in that process. There were sessions designed where you got feedback from youth about topics to find out what was important. All of that information was compiled, and that's what will be going to Congress in September.
Brilliant, brilliant. So if any of our viewers and our students from around the world want to be part of it, I guess they should just go to the IUCN Global Youth Summit social media and websites and have a look. Is there still time to add their thoughts and their comments and their views?
I'm actually not sure, but yes, the best recommendation to do, I know they're still compiling everything because there's so much information that they're trying to get through, but yeah, if you go to the Global Youth Summit website, or you can get in touch with your local branch of the IUCN, so that's Canada or whether you're in Europe, there's lots of different branches of the IUCN to be able to raise your voice and raise the importance of youth involvement within both the Congress and beyond.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And if we have any further information as TSL about the process or outcomes, we will definitely share that on TSL resources and channels. So thank you, Megan, for bringing us up to date on the IUCN youth activity. So before we go over to audience questions, I wonder, you've all made these incredibly wonderful and inspiring contributions. I wonder if you would like to comment or add to anything that you three panelists have said. Don't be shy, feel free to put your hand up. Oh, yes, go ahead, Vijo.
Just wanted to mention that it's interesting that when Megan started speaking, she started talking about the Native community at first, and I think that it's something that's very easily overlooked by people, because when you look at conservation or biodiversity, you're usually thinking about how do you plant more trees, or scientists or researchers, right? And you tend to forget about the people on the ground who've kind of already done all the research, but like 1,000 years ago. And they've already done all their, it's their own way of doing that research. And they kind of figured out how the balance in the environment works. So they know which tree to cut so that 3 more trees will grow and stuff like that. So I think that's such a high importance thing And that's something we have here too. And I must admit, when I first moved in here, I just didn't realize how important it was to talk to these people and to just, come in with the local native people and ask them what, and we do some agroforestry, and it is so useful to actually go up to them, ask them, what do you see that grows in the forest that we can plant and just leave, right? Because traditional farming is so like you plant and you water and you water and you water and you water and you fertilize, while the native people would tell you plant that and then just forget about it, come back 8 months later and pick it up and eat it, right? So I think that's super important, and that's something that's quite a point that most people should keep in mind while they are in such a place. An opportunity like that should not be passed along. Yeah.
Absolutely. Indigenous knowledge, native knowledge, traditional knowledge, very, very important, and easily overlooked in a world where, qualifications and expert knowledge tends to be dominant. Yeah, great. Well, any other comments from the panelists before we move to the audience questions?
I just wanted to, thank both of you, Sam and Vijo, for being my co-panelists. I mean, I think it speaks to what I was trying to talk about with the Global Youth Summit, that, we're all coming from completely different parts of the world, and we're all sort of saying the same thing, but in a different way, which I think is super inspiring. So it's been fantastic to be with you both.
Thank you.
I agree, yeah.
Oh, cheers, Sam. Brilliant. So I wonder now if we could bring Kirsty Shakespeare, if we can invite her into the panel discussion. She has been scanning the questions that have been coming in, and we're just drawing Kirsty up onto the panel now.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Kirsty, welcome.
Thank you very much. Yes, we've had lots of interest, lots of comments coming through from our audience on Facebook and also the live audience with us. So I've got a few questions to put to our panelists, if I may. So Sam, the first question has been sent to you. It's from Simonette Tenido Rabanaru. Sorry if I've pronounced that wrong. And she's asking you, Sam, what are the pros and cons of protecting biodiversity?
What are the pros and cons? Well, thank goodness there aren't many cons, but there are lots of definitely advantages of taking care of biodiversity. Biodiversity is so very important for everything. Not just the survival of the planet and for the survival of other species, but for us as well. For example, bees are extremely important in agriculture and in supporting our entire food industry, and they are I think they're endangered. So most bee species are endangered now. And so if we protected the biodiversity of the globe, then that would mean not only just protecting species as a whole, but also us as humans. It would be ensuring us as humans and our survival and our sustainable stay on this planet, because I personally believe that if we don't protect biodiversity, that either way, our time on this earth is limited, and we're only here for so long. So we want to make sure that we don't destroy what has provided for us for so long. And in regards to cons, there aren't that many cons in taking care of biodiversity, besides maybe, because people could argue that there could be an economic disadvantage in that you are spending money towards planting trees instead of, I don't know, creating a new mall or something that is a lot more economically focused. But ultimately, we could use protecting biodiversity as a chance for employment creation, especially here in South Africa, where there is a really high unemployment rate. There are lots of opportunities to create jobs in protecting biodiversity. And yeah, I feel like the pros greatly outweigh the cons.
Great, thank you, Sam. I hope that answers your questions, Simona. And our next question just come through from Carrie Fong. Will there be strategies planned in an ongoing pandemic situation as we're going now for protecting biodiversity? That's an open question, not aimed at anyone particularly. So any of the panelists want to answer that one?
I can jump in on that one. And actually, just to loop things back to the Global Youth Summit, we did have sessions specifically focused on COVID and the environmental response to COVID, everything from, you know, how is this going to change sort of the relationship that we see between biodiversity loss and increase in pandemics to, you know, all of the single-use plastic that we're seeing because of COVID. But I think actually there are some, I don't want to say bonuses, because obviously COVID is a horrible situation, but some of the ways that we found to adapt actually have been such a benefit. There is absolutely no way we would have got 15,000 people to the Global Youth Summit if it had not been virtual, and it would never have been virtual if not for COVID. It would have taken place during the World Conservation Congress as it does in person in France, and that really would have limited who has been able to go. And I think too, I personally have seen more people interested in nature from a local level of, I work on the ground on properties that are accessible to the public. And we've seen such an increase in people wanting to get outside and spend time outside hiking, both for their own mental well-being and because that's one of the only options that was available to people, and they've realized how much they love it. So we've seen an interest in people getting outside and being outside and wanting to protect these spaces. So if we can get a little positive out of what has happened, I think it may have done some good things for biodiversity as well.
Great, thank you, Megan. And this question has just come in from Daniel Trenchke, who's asked, what do you think is the best way for young people to help stop the sick mass extinction and help the environment? And again, that's open to any of our panelists. So maybe Vijo, you want to start with that one?
Okay.
Well, I guess I did start off with going back to my do statement. I'd say that I'd
Sorry, I did apologize earlier for technical issues. Vijo's screen seems to have temporarily frozen.
Sorry. Oops.
You're back, Vijo.
Am I back?
Hello?
Okay, am I still there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Back to you, Vijo.
Okay. So I was just saying that that the main thing with is back again to the meditation session, but the rest of the things that I'm about to say are maybe things that are easier to do when you have that calm mind. And one of them, of course, as we all know, is eating lesser meat. Right? I usually don't say go ahead and stop eating meat, because it is quite a difficult process. I myself am going through that process. So I'd say definitely work on eating lesser meat, because it has such a huge impact on the environment. And this is everything from meat in the sea and meat on land. So stop that. Secondly, I think we for personally, what I've seen is that taking an active interest in land conservation is a really big deal, because if you don't protect the raw land, you just can't seem to see the beauty of biodiversity within it. And I think that protecting land is such a new concept. It's not something that's turned up, that just happened, that in the past we never thought of protecting land. But now we have to think about actively protecting land. So meditate, eat less meat, protect land. I hope that's a good enough of a solution there, package of solution there.
Great, thank you, Vijo. Sam or Megan, if you've got anything else, how else we think that the best ways are for young people to help protect the environment and prevent the sick mass extinction?
So adding on to the eating less meat, I've been wanting to go vegan for a very long time, but my dad is just not ready, because there's such a stigma around plant-based eating and not eating meat. It's like such a taboo subject. I don't understand why. Maybe because people think that it's expensive, or that it's very, like, you have to pay a lot of money to buy the vegan versions or the vegetarian or the plant-based versions of different animal products. And I really think we need to talk about the stigma around plant-based eating, because it's vital in protecting biodiversity, especially considering all the documentaries that have been coming out lately about plant-based eating and about how important it is for a sustainable world, and how important conserving our resources are, especially considering a lot of, for example, carbon emissions and methane emissions are produced from agriculture use. And water consumption from agriculture use. And I just think it's really important that we talk about it and that we make it less of a stigma around actually going plant-based and making it easier for people to go plant-based, because it definitely is a difficult transition for most people.
Well,
And if I
thank you.
can, sorry,
Oh,
I was
yeah.
just going to jump in really quickly and say that excellent points from both of you. But the one thing it did make me think of, and that is really important if you do want to make a difference in biodiversity and in the environmental field, is to make sure you're taking care of your own mental well-being. It can be a very overwhelming space to be. It can be a very disheartening at times. You're going to hear a lot of statistics that make you sad, make you very upset. So it's important to be able to know how to take care of yourself and take a step back from that and realize you're not going to solve the entire biodiversity crisis by yourself. But that's okay, because we have so many other people that are standing right beside you to kind of help. Not one person has to take all of this on. So, you know, keep that passion, keep that fight, keep wanting to do this, but make sure you don't burn yourself out. That would just be my advice.
Well, thank you so much, Megan, and all the panelists. You really are a great inspiration to all of our viewers. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And I wish there was more time to continue the dialogue, but unfortunately there isn't. However, there is a new platform that TSL has just introduced yesterday. It is the new TSL community website. Which is going to allow us to continue these conversations, not just around one annual essay or debate competition, but really year-round. So we'd very much welcome you all to join it, community.trustforsustainableliving.org. And on the platform, our goals are to help our members build their sustainability skills, create new bonds with like-minded individuals, and also to help guide their progress. So we'd really very much welcome you to become a user, a member of the platform. Brilliant. And of course, there will be more information about those links on our social media channels and on our website. So, now just to end, we would like to share with you two video messages, short 1-minute video messages from entrants in the TSL Sustainability Challenge video competition. And the first one, I believe, is from Cameroon, and the second one is from Thailand, which is keeping on the international dialogue theme that we've had here. So Eva, thank you for queuing that up, and please go ahead and play it.
Belabo in the east region of Cameroon is a splendor of biodiversity, with about 59,400 hectares of forest land, with above 1,000 species of plant and animals. With the excessive logging most responsible for loss of biodiversity, about 1% of the forest land is lost yearly. In 2011, with the construction of the Lompanga Dam, 6,000 hectares of forest land was destroyed for the reservoir. 8,000 cubic meters was commercialized by the dam authority. The effect of deforestation on wildlife and illegal poaching has greatly threatened the survival of some endangered species, and illegal gold mining has also left the land inhabitable, and soil erosion are very common. It is therefore reasonable to support with high level of confidence a quantitative assessment of ecological, social, and economic consequence of recent forest responses to climate change, with much emphasis to reduce non-climatic human-induced pressure, which can help reduce the overall vulnerability of forest ecosystem and the people.
Well, thank you again, everyone. Thank you so much to Sam, to Vijo, to Megan, and to Kirsty. And we wish you all the best. Take care, everyone. This session has now ended. Thank you.